Hey folks, so back in late March, maybe March 25th, 26th, I posted a video called something around propagating elderberry in spring, and my test was, can I take a cutting that's already broken dormancy off of a plant, break it down into cuttings, and stick them and root them out? Because I did that in late summer with my figs, and I wanted to see if elderberries would do the same thing. It was kind of to prune a kind of a rogue branch off the shrub, but it was really to satisfy curiosity. And I wanted to do a little bit of an update right now. So let me show you the plants, because there's some things that are interesting going on here, and we're gonna test something along the way today. So here are 8 cuttings. They need to get watered in. They got a couple of weeds around them right now, but the curiosity was this. This one here was the second cutting from the bottom off of this one. So this was the base, and I was trying to get at the lowest point of the cutting of the whole cane or branch that I cut. We had really long internodes, and an internode is the space between the actual nodes. So for reference, this here is a node, and then this is the internode, and on this one down here in the plant is another node. Now, when I cut him off the top of this one, all I had was a really long internode, and I didn't want to waste that. So what I did was I scraped the bottom and I put rooting hormone on it to try to give it some help, since it didn't have that node. And when I was checking for roots on these, this one here had all the roots in the world. Now this one didn't have a bottom node, it just had the exposed area that I used rooting hormone on. That surprised the heck out of me, because this fella here, who had the rooting hormone, or did not have the rooting hormone but had the node at the bottom, nothing. And when I checked the rest of them, they're all kind of in that same boat. Pull a few of these little crabgrass weeds out. A little bit here, but all in all, not very much. So I'm not sure what I've got going on at the base of a lot of these plants, and what I wanted to do today was take one of these that had visually nothing at the base as far as roots go, and I wanted to break apart the root ball and see what we're working with. Because if there is nothing there but the wood still looks viable, I think I'm going to add rooting hormone to the ones that haven't rooted out to get them going, because I don't want to waste the cutting if I now have enough information to adjust the process to get these to successfully root out. So let's break one of these down. I'm going to get a tote or something that I can catch the material in and take a look at what we got. So as it stands, I have a box full of some material here. This is as good as any to capture this stuff. And if I'm going to pick one, I'm going to pick this guy, because I like it's about a Sharpie sized piece of wood that was used to cut. And let's see, since I haven't checked him yet, what he's got. Yeah, I'm not seeing anything, but these are possibly weed seed roots, so let's see what we got going on in there. One tiny little root. That tells me that he's doing something, and I am not going to bother. So what I was going to do was I was going to go ahead and cut down the side and use the rooting hormone. Now, you know what? I still might do that. He looks like he could probably use some help. Let me check one more. Yeah, nothing really doing on him. I think we're going to go ahead and break the other 7 down. I'm going to break them down and see who needs some rooting hormone, and we're going to go ahead and get these guys cleaned up and kind of reset. So what I'm going to do is I took all 7 that were not the one that had the rooting hormone on it with the really nice roots, because even the one that I thought had okay roots, I think most of those roots were actually weed roots. I didn't see much off his base. So we're going to go ahead and get these all sort of rinsed off on the bottom, pat them dry with a towel. Then we're going to snip the bottom. I say snip, we're going to shave down the side a little bit to expose some of the cambium layer. And then we're going to hit it with some rooting hormone. And then we're going to put them back in the pot. We're going to let them sit overnight in here and water them in tomorrow, just so that we don't wash off the rooting hormone. I don't know if that's a real risk or not, but it's one of those things that kind of runs through my head when I'm working the process. And we'll see how that goes. This was the one that had what looked to be a semi-extensive root system, not the one that had the rooting hormone the first time around, but the other one that I pulled when I was showing. And you can see it has a bit of root, has a bit another started there. So he's doing okay, but I am going to give him some rooting hormone to get him accelerated up. And then the rest of these, we've got this one here and nothing else for the most part. A little bit started on another one, but just not really what I expected after a solid 6 weeks. Especially considering the fact that the other one with the rooting hormone but no lower node did so well. So all we're going to do, take our knife and kind of just go in there and do something like that. Like I'm losing the outer side of this one, but you can still see it looks like the wood's pretty viable. So we'll get all these cut up nice and gently as best we can, not cutting too deep, but just deep enough to where we expose something like that, and then we'll paint over that with the rooting hormone. And I will probably do that as well on the ones that have a little bit of roots, just for some insurance. Easy as that. I say easy as that like I know this is going to somehow magically work. Not sure how they're going to respond after giving all that time in there without actually having the rooting hormone. But this is why you like to play around with fun stuff like this, because every time you take an opportunity to try something different, you can learn something. And folks, we are now rooting hormoned up, and we are ready for them to sit for, I'm guessing, somewhere between 4 and 6 weeks, and then we'll pick the video back up then. So signing off, we'll see you next time. June 5th, folks. Today is a little bit of a rainy morning, but we are going to close out the spring elderberry video, and it's been pretty interesting coming from the last scene that we just saw as to where we stand today. So let's take a look. So as you can see, we have 4 pots. What does that mean? That means 4 have survived the original 8, and 3 have survived the 7 that about a month ago we went ahead and tried to fix with some rooting hormone. And over the last few weeks, I checked periodically to see who was rooting out, as leaves might have been kind of dying off or leafing out. So for example, this was the bottom piece of the original cutting. I've lost that leaf. This one's still there. He did not have any root to be shown or seen. And now we've got roots through. This was the second piece that was above that guy. And it's the one that we had no bottom node, but we did have rooting hormone on, and it's doing amazing. It dries out all the time in the heat. It continues to produce an amazing root structure. I've either got to pot him on soon or get him into the ground. I haven't decided which. And just for whatever reason, these smaller ones did just fine, whereas the other 4, which were not huge, just didn't make it. So of the original 8, we got 4. Of the redoing of the 7, we've got 3. I learned a lot from that process. I will definitely be using rooting hormone again if for some reason I need to take a spring cutting, and I'm going to show you why now. These three little guys here, probably about a month after I shot the original video, part one of this whole this two-part series, I was working around the base of the exact same elderberry plant as the Bob Gordon, and when I moved, I hit a branch with my back, it snapped off, and I immediately looked at what I broke off and I said, hey, I might have cuttings here. I jogged inside, I cut the bottoms off a little bit, I got a node beneath, and I rooting hormoned all three of them. And despite the fact that there's not a whole lot of original wood here, all three of these survived and all three rooted out. So I batted 3 for 3 using the rooting hormone on these, whereas the original batch I went 1 for 8 until I reapplied to recover, which recovered a few of them. So that tells me that if I need to take a spring cutting after it has broken dormancy, rooting hormone is definitely the way to go. And that concludes this little two-part series on whether or not you can propagate elderberry in the spring after a plant has broken dormancy. I learned a lot in this little process, mostly that if it happens, I need to use rooting hormone as opposed to not. The percentages were much higher in the cases where it did, and contextually, what does this tell me? I don't want to say I'm never. If I take cuttings from my elderberry for propagation, I will probably be taking them in January or February prior to breaking dormancy, much like I would do a fig cutting. However, if I'm working around the plant and I break something, and it's a pretty decent sized piece of wood, there's no reason that I can't just take that, break it into cuttings as I just showed you with the other three, and again, propagate and go. It seems like it's a readily rootable plant, but the rooting hormone did seem to make a pretty big difference. So from that standpoint, I probably wouldn't take cuttings in the spring, but I feel like I have a better understanding now of what it would take to get them to be successful if for some reason I do have a branch that pops off and I want to grow another plant from it. So that's it for this one. Appreciate you taking the time to watch, and we'll see you next time.